Well, thank you for allowing me to share with you guys. It's nice to share with people. Usually my congregation is what I say, diapers through cooties and the beginning of body odor. And it's nice to be with the adults in the room for once. Well, most of you, now that I'm looking around. I know how some of your maturity levels are, but I love being here, but I'm not going to lie, I do miss the kids over there. It's a zoo today. We're grateful for things God's doing over there and growing that program and breathing life into a lot of our kids. I also want to say that piece of eye candy that did the big picture, Big Mike, all right? He's our DCS director. He's done it now for 2 weeks. And I just want to say he's taken over where I kind of took this thing. He's doing an amazing job. So if you ever stop by on Saturdays, the parking lot was packed yesterday, and he's doing an amazing job. Organizationally, he is everything that I am not, organized. All right, so thank you very much for taking over the program and pouring your heart into it. The kids are going to benefit, the community is going to benefit from it as well. I will say, what's exciting about today for me was I received a little affirmation this morning before church began that what God's saying is the right thing today. Through the doors this morning walked a man I haven't seen here in church in 3 or 4 years. I said, I made a big stink about it, and he's like, we need to talk. So we went back to a back room, and he just started bawling. Everything's falling apart. And after praying with him, I said, now listen, I want you to understand something. When you go and listen to the sermon today, I'm not preaching at you. I prepared this ahead of time. I'm not telling your story. This is something God is already doing. And the coolest part is afterwards, he came up to me, gave me a hug, and he said, I'll send you my number. We'll get in touch. And Steve Hunt's going to reach out to this guy. It's affirmation that what I believe today is a collision of God's story and my story to breathe life into your stories. And I believe it's going to happen. That revival that's taking place down in Kentucky, I believe that same spirit's here today. So buckle up, all right? Now, my main problem about this sermon series, I will say, Pastor Chuck, is that have you ever had a breakfast where after eating a bowl of cereal, you really felt satisfied? Really, how many bowls of cereal do you need to eat to feel like you had something for breakfast? You laugh. 2? You must be eating grape nuts, buddy, because those just sit there hard, all right? No, 2 or 3 or whatever it takes. It's ironic because is there any feeling besides loneliness that's worse than emptiness? Yeah? I'm not talking about the belly stuff. I mean just feeling empty. And you know that because we all have worked really hard trying to fill it. Some people try through romance. If I could just find the right woman, if I could just find the right man, you get married, you think that's going to bring you the meaning and the purpose you're longing for. Maybe you've tried it through a family. I just want to have kids. If I could just have kids, I feel like everything will make sense and I'll feel like I'm doing something that matters. And some try it through wealth or just getting a little more income so you have that little bit of job security that was kind of leaving you and thought, if I could just have the money, I'll be okay. Or maybe it's the career part. If I could just climb that ladder and have that job where people look to and like, yeah, that guy matters. That lady has it all together. But for those of you who've lost it, you know how empty that can be. And so you try to fill it with half price fulfillment. Instead of going after relationships, you just get some sex to fill it. Or instead of going for a career, you do some sneaky things behind the scenes to try to quickly put that meaning into your life. Or you following me? I mean, you're not alone. And that's the cool part about today, is that this is a story for us all. This is a journey that some of you have been through, some of you are walking in, you can't identify what it is you're feeling, but today you're like, that's it, that's what I'm feeling right now. And some of you, it might be coming. So it's important to get ourselves prepared to understand what it is this emptiness is and what it is that's really going to fill this. So I got to pick any cereal I wanted. I picked Cocoa Puffs. Now, You might think that the reason I picked Cocoa Puffs, or the greatest fact about Cocoa Puffs, is that in 1950s, this was the first cereal ever made with chocolate. Hershey's Cocoa. But you're wrong. You might think that the greatest thing about this cereal, it's the little brother or little sister of Kix and Trix. Did you realize that? Now that you think about it, they look just like them, right? The little balls. They are the afterthought. It was Kix and Trix and Cocoa Puffs. But you're wrong again. You might think that the greatest thing about Cocoa Puffs, it is one of the few cereals where after you eat your cereal, you have your chocolate milk ready to go. You got that right. That's straight facts, buddy. I'm preaching truth, aren't I? But you're still wrong. The greatest fact about Cocoa Puffs is what makes the Cocoa Puff. And that would be the puff gun. Okay, that was lame. Let's try that again. I'll be a little more impressed. That would be the puff gun. There we go. There we go, the puff gun. So back pre-Depression, cereals were primarily one of two things. They were either like really hard, like grape nuts, but with less flavor, and they took longer to soak the milk in, like an hour, so otherwise you're eating like gravel. Or they were flakes. Boring, right? All right, so they thought, let's come up with something else to do with cereal. So back in 1901, a botanist came up with this process where he would get grains and moisture in a little bottle, and he would heat it at just the right temperature, and then he would blast in some air, and that grain would puff up like 10 times its size. Pretty cool. So then they started, after the Depression, 1930s, 40s, they came up with this puff gun that you're seeing on the screen, where they would take a large amount of grain and moisture, and they heated just the perfect temperature, and then they would blast in air, and that would be so cool just to stick your tongue. You stick your mouth out, just have it blow in there, kind of like jumping in a ball pit, but you have like popcorn just blasting your face. But then they industrialized it, modified it, so then you get this thing, it looks like you're in a milking parlor, doesn't it? Those are the lines of puff guns. So these guys would walk up and down the rows, finding the one that's about the right temperature, push the button, it would just blast in air, and you'd blow up these pieces of grain and sugar and cocoa, or sugar, cocoa, and grain. That's probably the right order of what really makes up a Cocoa Puff. And because they built such big mass things, they're all kind of generally the same size. So Rice Krispies and Cheerios and Cocoa Puffs, Kix and Trix, that's a product of the puff gun. Now, remember what I said. This is a conversion today of God's story and my story. I'm not telling my story to brag about what I've figured out. If you know me well enough, you know I'm not very wise. I'm talking today because I want to testify to God's goodness and the journey he took me in to figure out what he's talking about. It was a long, hard journey, so hang with me. I'm not bragging. I'm not bragging. And the reason I'm even more convinced I'm going to share this is because I haven't felt as frustrated with my state of being until this week. I'll share that a little bit later. It'll make more sense when I'm done. So I'm going to take you back to about 2009. I'm sitting in a Chipotle in Pasadena, California. I'm working on my doctoral work. I'm with my class, and my phone pings, and it is an email from a former friend of mine, acquaintance of mine who was a secretary at a university. And she said, in the email said, "Hey, Beau, your mentor, he's retiring, and they're not filling his position. They're going to add a new youth ministry teaching position. I know you're back in school. Would you be interested in the job?" Yeah, I think that'd be great. So I was so excited, I even called Nicole from California. I said, "Listen, this is what I got to call." She was like, "Well, back in college, that had been, 15 years earlier?" She said, you actually mentioned once you thought maybe someday you would love to teach young students how to become pastors. Like, how weird. So God's taken a dream back in college, converging it with a dream now when I'm in my young 30s, and he's pressing open this door for me to walk through and change the world. What I found, though, was God was pressing on me. And he's going to totally break me down and ultimately change me through that whole process. See, what I'm going to show you that I was trying to fill myself with is a lot like puff guns, okay? You might do with like a career. For me, it was my job. So I actually went and applied for that job, and here I am. I didn't get it. And so I applied for a few more, and then my wife said, okay, slow down a bit. Why don't you finish your dissertation and then start again? So I waited 3 years and worked on the papers and stuff, and I was miserable. Not just because my church was bad. I mean, kids were growing. We were growing as a group. It was really great, but I was miserable to live with. So made it through the dissertation stuff and started to apply again. And I applied for a teaching job in Texas and a campus ministry job in Kansas, and I felt like I was on the stage of America's Got Talent, and instead of getting the golden buzzer, I was getting X, X, X. And see, the angst I was feeling was this emptiness that I was trying to fill with something quick, and I'm going to call that puff gun peace. It's something that just blows something into you, but puff gun peace is something that's very fragile. Because think for a second with me. What is inside this sugar cocoa grain ball? What's in it? What's the biggest element in here? Air, right? Air is not strong. Air is very weak. Every one of these is probably like a snowflake. They're all a little different because it just works itself in there differently. But you add any kind of pressure to this Cocoa Puff, sorry about this, Steve, I'm going to give you a lot of vacuuming up here. Just disappears. Just a little bit of pressure. And the only thing more unsatisfying than puff gun peace is losing it altogether. You thought, if I could just find that man or that woman and have them in my life, it would fill that emptiness. And 7 years in the marriage, now you have kids and things are getting different. And maybe 15, 20 years, and now you're getting empty nest. And you're like, that's not the person I married. And you walk out on them or they walk out on you. And you lose it. Little pressure, gone. You thought, well, if I could just have some kids. If I could just have some kids, it would bring our marriage together and make me feel fulfilled. And you have kids, and they're really good kids, and they're kind, and they end up in church, and they are smart, or they're good musicians, they're good at sports, and then they make a left-hand turn, and another. Now they're spiraling out of control, and you feel like a miserable parent because they just grew up bad. Try to fill it with finances. Build up that 401k. It's going to fill you up, give you a little peace about things, but then 2007, 2008 come along. Or right now, your dollar that you're saving up is not worth what it used to be. Career. You're building up, you're climbing the ladder, and you can't control sometimes what the CEO says. He cuts your job. He lays you off. He cuts your time. You can't afford it anymore. Or you retire. And everyone used to look to you because you were the wise person. You were the smart person. You were the head person. You had all the right answers, had all the advice, and now you're sitting on the sidelines. You don't matter to anybody. Am I touching some nerves here? Puff gun peace is fragile because it's contingent on something unpredictable and changing. I'm not just talking about raising a teenage kid and the changing voice, or a middle-aged man changing. I mean, they're unpredictable. They change quick, and all of a sudden, because of no decision you made, it's fragile, it's fleeting, it's just air. It just blows away quickly, a little bit of pressure, and they change, and then your life gets rocked. So I never got one of those jobs, obviously. But when I moved here within months of moving here, I got the opportunity to teach at a seminary online, which was really cool. I got my foot in the door, right? Moving toward that dream God's placing in my heart. So I would come to work in the morning, and then I'd go home and help the kids and get into bed, and then from like 9 o'clock till 11, 12, 1 some nights, I'd respond to emails and grade papers. I was exhausted. But I felt it was the price to pay to do what I felt God was leading me to do. Then I got an opportunity to teach a night class at Mount Vernon Nazarene. Nazarenes need Jesus too, right? Fair? Martha, Nazarenes need Jesus too, right? All right, gotcha. I jest. So I got to go down there. So on Mondays were my day off, my Sabbath, which I broke 2 years straight. I'd wake up, help get the kids off to school, my wife would go to work, and I'd start studying, getting my lesson plan ready. Kids would come home off the bus, I'd settle them in, and 15 minutes later, I'm out the door, drive an hour to Mount Vernon, get my classroom ready for 3 hours from 6 to 9. Oh, horrible to teach that long with college kids. The only thing that came good out of that was I met this one student named Alex Workman, youth pastor. He wasn't a very good student. He's still not good at reading, he's still not good at writing, but he was good at learning. He asked all the right questions, soaked up everything. That's where we found him. I'm glad I took that job, but I come home at 10 o'clock, my kids are already in bed. I'd seen him for 15 minutes a day. That's not a good dad. On top of it, miserable to live with, but it was all this work I was putting into getting that opportunity. But it was not good for my family, and frankly, probably not good enough for you guys either here. That's what makes this whole passage we're reading out of, Psalm 34, so remarkable, because it's written by a guy named David. And for those of you who may be new to the Bible, David was that teenage boy who killed that giant Goliath, okay? Ringing a bell. All right? Not only that, after he killed the giant Goliath, he became one of the leaders of the Israelite army and led him into many battles and many victories, actually got more popular than the king. That was part of the problem too, the fact that he was also going to be the next king. Had everything going for him, but at this point when he writes this, it's commonly understood that he's running from the king because now the king wants to kill him because he's so jealous. So David, instead of living in a palace, is hiding in caves. Instead of leading armies, he's leading a band of 15, 20 men. Instead of being with his wife and family, he's always on the run. And yet he writes these words. Will you follow along with me on the screen? We're going to read Psalm 34 together. I'll praise the Lord at all times. I'll constantly speak his praises. I will boast only in the Lord. Let all who are helpless take heart. Come, let us tell the Lord's greatness. Let us exalt his name together. I prayed to the Lord and he answered me. Hold on, you're living in a cave. How did he answer you? He freed me from all my fears. All of them? Those who look to him for help will be radiant with joy. No shadow of shame will darken their faces. In my desperation, I prayed, and the Lord listened. I'm not seeing that yet, but clearly David's seeing something that we're not. He saved me from all my troubles, says the man who's running from a king so he can't get killed. For the angel of the Lord is a guard. He surrounds and defends all those who fear him. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Oh, the joys of those who take refuge in him. Fear the Lord, you godly people, for those who fear him will have all they need. That's what Pastor Dylan was preaching about a few weeks ago. Fear of the Lord, that's holiness. Even strong young lions sometimes go hungry, but those who trust in the Lord will lack no good thing. What did David find that we don't have? He had a family. He had a career. He had fame, wealth. All he was left with was his life. So what did he find that we didn't? In this state, he goes on to share these next words with us. He's going to teach us something now. From that cave, from running around, from fearing for his life, he teaches us this. Next verse. There we go. Come, my children, that's us. Listen to me, and I will teach you to fear the Lord. Does anyone want to live a life that is long and prosperous? Yeah, right? I can resonate. Then keep your tongue from speaking evil and your lips from telling lies. Turn away from evil and do good. Search for peace and work to maintain it. In the NIV it says this: seek peace and pursue it. What was this peace that David found that clearly I'm not finding? He's lost more than I've ever gained. Well, if you've been around church and heard me preach over the last 9 years, periodically, you'll hear me that I've shared this word, this Hebrew word, many, many times. And it's a word that's changed my life, and I'm trusting it's going to change yours. Because the word for peace is shalom. David found shalom, which is the opposite of puff gun peace. Shalom is this really rich word that has so much meaning that always seem to be translated to peace, but really it can translate as wholeness, completeness. Because to have this shalom exists when our relationship with God and with humans is right. When they talk peace in the Bible, it's not hippie peace, no war. It's not, I can lay in bed and peace. No, this is when this is right, and this is right. And for this to be right, for the relationship to God to be right, that's called holy obedience. That's when he says something, you do it. Even if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, you do it. You have a relationship with him so you can hear him when he says something. And so you can respond. You can challenge. You can question. But ultimately, you do because you trust. There's something there that I need. That's what makes this right. And for this to be right, it takes reconciliation. And for that to happen, that means, one, you do wrong, you apologize. And if someone wrongs you, you forgive. And that's at the heart of this shalom that David has found, that he's longing for us to find. This peace is completely opposite from puff gun peace because it is not based on something that is unpredictable, something that can change, something that is very weak. Because instead of being filled with air, that is just a little pressure, it falls apart, and frankly, this disappears. It's filled with this. Malachi 3:6. I, the Lord, do not, say it. Do not change. James 1:17. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from God our Father, who created all the lights in the heavens. He never... You may feel like he changes. Remember that time you were at that church or at that meeting or at your home and you had that moment with God where he seems so real and now things seem to be just crumbling around you and you don't feel him anymore and you feel like he's bailed on you? That's your feeling. But that's not true. He's as real and with you as he was that time when it felt so warm and right. But Beau, you said it's not based on things that are changing. We're talking about people still. Fair. Because people change. But remember what it takes for reconciliation from you? It's got nothing to do with them. It's you apologizing when you did wrong. Even if they don't ask it, even if they did something first to hurt you, you still apologize, even though it was probably deserved on your part. And it's you forgiving, even if they never asked for it. Even though they're still the worst person in your world, even though if they live 1,000 miles away, even if they're dead, you can still forgive. Because it's forgiveness that changes you. And it's up to God to take care of them. Seek peace. Seek shalom. And pursue it. He tells you need to forgive. Pursue it. He tells you peace is found in apologizing. Pursue it. Tells you need to spend a little more time with him to be able to hear his voice. Pursue it. Peace is found in you changing your career. Pursue it. Peace is found in you re-pursuing that marriage. Pursue it. Peace is found in you spending more time with your kid praying, getting them to church. You'll find peace. Pursue it. If peace is found in you changing your focus from academic development, athletic development, music development, it's time to focus on spiritual development, pursue it. And if God's asking the same of you for your kid to change from academic, athletic, and music development to spiritual development, pursue it. If that's where you're going to find the peace, whatever the cost. If God's pressing on right now to pursue something that you're longing for, even if you think that's not the thing that's going to help me, can you trust the one who made you for once? That he knows what you're missing better than you know what you've already found. And you will find what Philippians 4:6 calls a peace which surpasses all understanding. Still the next part of the verse. Don't worry about anything, but pray about anything. Tell God what you need. Thank him for all he has done. And the peace that passes all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. You can't explain it. That's what David found. It makes no sense, but he found what we're longing for while we're jamming and stuff. That is puff gun peace. It seems to make perfect sense, but it still leaves us dead and empty and unfulfilled. After 2 years at Mount Vernon, I got an offer to have an interview at a college for a teaching position. It's like 5 states away. And I said, okay, I'll interview. I didn't tell my wife, though. I'm not advising that. 2 days before the interview, which was online, I told her. And that was a conversation that started changing this stuff. She looked at me, we're in our bedroom, and she said, why can't you just be happy? We're at a good place, a good church, but you're just never satisfied. I feel like I just don't know when I'm going to get the word that we're going to change. You're going to change the job. We're going to move. And we just got here. I want our kids to have a stable home, to grow up at one school through their tumultuous adolescent years. Why can't you just be okay and thank God for what we have? That hurt, but it was true. I still interviewed for the job. Didn't get it. Then a few weeks later, I get an email from Mount Vernon Nazarene asking me to teach another year. Now that conversation with my wife, God through my wife, started softening me up to where I could hear what God was saying. And he was clearly saying, no. Now, you and I would probably say, well, God, if you didn't want me to take it, why did you even give it to me in the first place? Why even offer it in the first place to make a hard decision? That'd have been nice. God said, I want you to take it. So I sat there on my green lazy boy right beside the fireplace at night with the email there, and I responded to the email, and I knew the minute I hit send, my dream of teaching, gone. A dream that God had planted in my heart. Back in college, a dream that God had revived when I was getting my doctorate 15 years later. And now he's saying, say no, let it go. I wrote the email, I sat there and prayed. I was hoping for a lightning flash fire to jump out of the fireplace, or God to say, no, through my wife as she runs in, don't hit the button, take the job. Didn't ever happen. I hit send. And I promise you, it was one of those few moments in my life where I know I had a supernatural experience, because I physiologically just felt free. I felt like a weight off my chest. I felt like I could breathe. I felt this load of stress we just talked about before church, Bob, that just left me. Because I said no to what I thought was God's dream He sat in my heart. Can you see my change starting to happen? Fast forward a couple of years, and we're sitting in our staff meeting room, and it's Pastor Chuck, Pastor Dylan, Pastor Alex, and me. And Pastor Chuck says, I want to share with you all that Pastor Dylan, we're adding a new online pastor job. And Pastor Dylan has said, you know what, I think that's something that aligns with me. I'd love to take it. So we will be looking for a new kids pastor. That was the second supernatural experience where I honestly felt my chest get tight and God say, take it. Now, this is what makes no sense. Every career you have, there's a ladder you climb from being the peon at the bottom to being the boss at the top. And there is it's not real, but it's kind of understood that when you get out of college, you are a kids pastor, youth pastor, and eventually you become lead pastor. I'm 44 years old at this time. I should be going after Pastor Chuck's job. I said that first service. He knows. And he's nervous. No. If you'd told me at 18, 19, 20 years old at college, Beau, when you're 45, you're going to be a kids pastor. I said, you're an idiot. That's not how God works. If you had told me sitting at Chipotle in 2009, just wait, Beau, in about 10, 12 years, you're going to be a kids pastor. I'm like, that's not why I'm becoming a doctor. So I can preach to diapers to cooties. But I knew what God was saying. And so I held it close to my chest. Remember, I'm not celebrating me here, church. I'm showing you the journey. I kept close to my chest. I told Nicole after 2 weeks, kind of nervous. She said, Beau, if God's doing it, don't get in the way. Went and told Pastor Chuck. He wasn't so keen on that idea. But he said, I'll pray about it. And a month later, came back and said, yeah, this is what God's up to. I don't like it, he said. This is what God's up to. And I can honestly tell you, church, for the first time since 2009, I have found shalom. I'm at peace. And the reason I know this is true is because when I started preparing this last week, all of a sudden these Facebook posts started coming of people who I've been envious of, who have big stages, talking to big churches, professors, and I stand before minions. And I can feel that pang again. But I know it's not true. And that's why I'm certain, church, this is what God wants you to hear today. Not because Beau is something great, but because he is. And I want you to find just a piece of what I've found. And it's not in anything that we've talked to previously. It's only in this. As I was working through this, it reminded me of a song that we used to lead back a year or so ago, and you might have sung it since then. We don't sing it with the kids. If you're new, this is what I did for 8 years here. The song goes like this. I've searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Sound right? Man's empty praise, treasures that fade, were never enough. Popping Cocoa Puffs. But then you came along, and you put me back together. And now every desire is now satisfied here in your love. That's where I've been, church. Sing with me. Oh, there's nothing, come on, better than you, Lord. There's nothing, come on now, better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Sing with me and sing this part. Stand up, please. And now I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. What a miracle, church. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley, and there's not a place where your mercy and grace won't find me again. Now we can say, oh, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Again, oh, there's nothing, that's right, better than you, Lord. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. That's the piece you're missing. That's the piece that's going to start changing. Oh, that's a good play on words. That's the peace that's going to bring that peace. Remember, church, David ran for over 4 years in hidden caves. This was a 15-year journey for me. The beginning and the middle and 2/3 of the way through and 99% of the way through, it all stinks on this side. I wouldn't give it back for anything. So if you're at a place where you're trying to figure out what is it that I'm missing, stop searching for it in a person, stop searching for it in a finance, in kids, in a job, unless he's telling you. If you've lost it all, it's not numbing it through abusing something is not going to take it away. Jam something good in it. Him. And if God's saying right now, he's pressing you right now, he said, I got something for you. And this is where you got to change. Stop fighting him. There's a part of me that wish I could stand on a big stage and mentor these kids and be a big deal, and as a professor, a big preacher or something. But I honestly think it would destroy any sense of humility I had. And now here I have peace. God's got what you want. David had what you want. I found what you want. Don't come getting it from me, him. And don't fight it anymore. Will you close with me by reading together the last part of the psalm? I want you to read out loud with me. All right? You're at home, you're watching this too. Read it on the screen, and you're the only one hearing it. That's cool too. Maybe your kids will hear, and that's a cool thing too. Read this with me. The eyes of the Lord watch over those who do right. His ears are open to their cries for help. Hey, we could stop there. It's good news. Keep going. But the Lord turns his face against those who do evil. He will erase their memory from the earth. The Lord hears his people when they call to him for help. Come on. He rescues them from all their troubles. It's coming, church. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Yes, you. Brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. The righteous person faces many troubles, but the Lord comes to rescue each time. For the Lord protects the bones of the righteous. Not one of them is broken. Church, best news ever. Through Jesus, he came and took care of this. It is extended to you today. I think the benediction is pretty simple. Seek peace. Now, church, you hear it, pursue it. See you next week. Please take your kids with you. I love them, but take them with you.